Welcome everyone to the May TV Toastmasters, and I want to welcome some guests today. Gary Mull from Dayton, who came down to visit us, and Dick Reed, who not only is a visitor but is our newest member, and because of Dick we're able to charter today. So thank you, Dick, for becoming a member. I would like to turn it over to our Toastmaster for the day. He is a long-term Toastmaster. He's a retiree from the Treasury Department, and Joe Schwerling. Joe.
Thank you, Rick, and welcome again, everyone. First of all, I'll put a little promotional tip for Senior Citizens Fitness. I happen to have retired recently, as Rick indicated, and just learned, actually last year, that like the senior games of Northern Kentucky has been going on for 20 years, and that's part of physical fitness for senior citizens that apparently is available nationwide. You have the individual counties, in this case it's several in Northern Kentucky. You have competitions, there are similar in Ohio and particularly around Cincinnati and Hamilton County. There are statewide games that are held later in the summer. There are even a national competition that's held in a different part of the country each year. So even outside of Toastmasters, there are things that people can do for for physical fitness in addition to the mental fitness and the fun that we have at Toastmasters. And I just brought one of my many medals. They're not that hard to earn. It's just like with Toastmasters, it's stepping outside your normal activity and the sense of accomplishment you get. And our first presenter today will be Verna Gibson. Verna will be presenting Word Power. Please welcome Verna.
Good morning, everyone. The word power today is hallmark. You have all heard of hallmark. Hallmark is actually a noun. It means a mark or symbol of genuineness or high quality. I believe achieving DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster, is the hallmark for a Toastmaster. And I think today we need to honor two of our newest DTMs, Kormelink and Joe Buell. Thank you.
Thank you, Verna. And again, with a correlation between Toastmasters, and just as the Distinguished Toastmaster medal is the hallmark of a Distinguished Toastmaster, the gold, silver, and bronze medals are indicative of and a hallmark of physical fitness. And our next activity today will be Tabletopics. And for that, I would like to introduce Steve Ahrenholz, who will be presenting the selected individuals to answer an impromptu question or reply to a situation on an impromptu basis. Something we run into in our daily lives, and it adds to our information base and to our fun today. Please welcome Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and to all of our guests who are looking in today. Table Topics is the opportunity that we have in each meeting to think on our feet. For my topics today, what I've chosen to do is select some questions that I'm going to pose from a book entitled Don't Sweat the Small Stuff at Work by Richard Carlson. Some of you may be familiar with his work. It is entitled Don't Sweat the Small Things, and it's all small stuff, or Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. What I'll do is I'm going to just select one of the little discussions that he has, and then I will ask it of one of our participants that's here today. I would like for the first question to have Toastmaster come up here and speak to us on the importance of remembering to acknowledge. Joe Buell, I'd like you to come up here and speak on the importance of remembering to acknowledge people.
Remember what?
Remembering to acknowledge people in the workplace. The importance of remembering to acknowledge. Remembering to acknowledge people. The importance of that.
Mr. Toastmaster and Mr. Topic Master and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It is very important to acknowledge people because people, if you see a photograph of a group of people and it's passed around, who do you think you look after first? You look at first. You look at yourself first and then at the rest of the group. That means that we are all individuals of ego. We like to see ourselves in a good situation. We like to see ourselves no matter what first, and then we see somebody else. So acknowledging somebody, acknowledging yourself, acknowledging somebody else is important because it brings up the energy flowing within your body or the person's body to pay attention to what's going on. That's what's important, Mr. Topic Master.
Thank you, Joe. That was a really good response. The next question that I would like to have someone come up here and speak to is the importance of making friends with your receptionist. And I think you should not interpret receptionist necessarily as the receptionist that answers the phone. I think a lot of us have people that we work with, your secretary, your administrative assistant, your receptionist, someone that's in that capacity. I'd like to have Dick Reed come up here and talk on the importance of making friends with your receptionist or someone of equivalent stature.
A receptionist is the person that people meet first when they come to visit a company or to visit you. And if you make friends with them, they will be more receptive to putting you in a good light, which is what you want when you are meeting someone, particularly for the first time. So it is important to make good friends. In fact, it's important to make friends with everybody, not just the receptionist, because you never want to make enemies with anyone.
Thank you, Dick. Often we don't remember that the receptionists or people of that position tend to be the gatekeepers. And those are the people who sometimes are the best ones to ask if you want to find out what's really going on. The next thing I would like to have someone come up here and speak on is learning to say no without guilt. How many of us deal with that in the workplace? You keep getting asked for different things, and we all have this inclination to say yes, and afterwards we have regret, buyer's remorse. Tom Hoddle, I'd like for you to come up here and give us your perspective on learning to say no without guilt.
It's hard to say no sometimes, especially when you get the high pressure pitch. But I think after 5 years of working in IT and hearing just about everything from a vendor, I have learned to probably say no a little too often and a little too aggressively. But it is important to stand your ground, be firm, not be rude about it, but just to be able to state your case, and if you can't come to an agreement, walk away. It happens. That's life. And Mr. Tabletopics Master.
Thank you, Tom. For the last table topics that we'll do today, I would like to have our next speaker speak on the saying, or some people might consider it a cliche, be careful what you ask for. Gary Mull.
Thank you, Mr. Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our welcome guests. Be careful what you ask for. Why should you be careful what you ask for? Well, obviously, because you just might get it. So in asking for things, you probably ought to be prepared to handle whatever comes afterwards. A lot of times, many of us take on responsibilities, challenges, and like Tom said earlier, we're almost afraid to say no in a lot of cases. And sometimes the opportunities that come our way are not exactly in the package that they were originally presented in. However, I would recommend to you that a lot of times what you ask for can be a great thing. If you ask for things that will enrich you, will enlighten you, will give you opportunities, and so there are often a lot of benefits in saying yes rather than saying no. On the other hand, if you ask for things that you know are not going to benefit you in the long run, then don't be surprised with the outcome. Mr. Tabletopics Master.
Thank you, Gary. I think along with that, we also have to think about why we are asking for some of the things we request. That's going to conclude our table topics for today. I want to thank Joe, Tom, Dick, and Gary for participating. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to our Toastmaster. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Steve. And I might add that I believe many of the topics that Steve presented today, again, exemplify the opportunities and the characteristics of Toastmasters. One thing that many clubs are always asking for is the more guests and members to join and participate in the opportunities. Similarly, most of the members of this club belong to other clubs, so they've all refused to say no when offered the opportunity to participate in more than one Toastmasters club for the unique opportunities in this television situation. And just as Joe and Dick referred to on the acknowledgement and the recognition and the opportunities available in Toastmasters, that's the welcome mat that we try to put out for all our guests and members, and in this case we even have the opportunity of the audience at home. Now, with the conclusion of table topics, we will begin our formal prepared speech presentations. So at this point we'll take a short break and we'll be resuming with our formal presentations.
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker, Stanley Glitchner.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
We will now be entering the speaking phase of the meeting, and our first presenter will be Jerome Manigan. His evaluator for this project will be Sheila Mudd Baker, and I'd like to call on Sheila at this time to give his objectives. Sheila?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. For all of you here and for our general audience, you need to realize that speaking is not as easy as it seems. That everyone, no matter how many times they give speeches, for how many years they give speeches, they still need to review and need to get better about what they're doing. So today, Mr. Manigan is giving a speech to highly placed executives, and that includes you too, you in the audience, highly placed executives who have been in a training with him all day. This particular project is a training program. Mr. Manigan has 5 to 7 minutes in which to talk to these highly placed executives about understanding the needs of their audience and also understanding exactly how to deliver a speech to that audience, meeting their needs. So this is a 5 to 7 minute speech, and at the end we will give a panel discussion of how well Mr. Manigan did on videotape and how well he met his objectives. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jill. To add to what Sheila mentioned, Jerome's presentation today, it's a training presentation for an audience on how to prepare, on speech making and preparing for an audience. So with that, please welcome Jerome Manigan.
If we can, let us review for a few moments the elements of a speech. Carol, could you tell us, what are the elements of a speech?
The elements of our speech are to have a dynamic opening, to have a body, and depending on your time, you expand on it, and to have a dynamic conclusion. And remember that the last thing that is said is what people remember.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Carol. So we understand that a speech is going to have 3 elements: an opening, a body, and a closing. The opening and the closing are pretty much the same. In the opening, you tell what you are going to say in your speech, and in the closing, you say, I have said these things, so you are repeating your opening. Now, for the body of the speech, the body should have details supporting ideas that you express in your opening. So let's say that you are going to present 3 or 4 ideas in your opening. I'm going to talk about the weather, I'm going to talk about the geography, I'm going to talk about the art museum, and I'm going to tell you how geography, art museum, and all of those things come together. So there should be 1 paragraph for each one of those items. In our example, now you have an opening paragraph, and then you have 4 additional paragraphs in the body, and then you have the conclusion, which means that you now have 6 paragraphs that you need to develop. And if you keep that structure in mind, you will be able to work through the development of your speech. Now, what I want to get to is your audience. And before I get to your audience, maybe we need to go back and review this whole business of how you structure, how you put together your speech. We know that for speech making, we need to do what? Pre-write, brainstorm. We need to come up with our topic, and then we need to generate some ideas around that topic. Let's say, Alex, give us a topic. Give us a topic, any topic.
Weather.
The weather, all right? Very broad, and we're going to somehow have to bring that into a manageable level. So, we're talking about weather. Brainstorming weather. Give me 1 thought that comes to your mind about weather, Joe.
Disasters.
Disastrous. Sheila, give me another thought that comes to your mind about weather.
Vacation weather.
Vacation weather. Verna, would you give me an idea that comes to your mind about weather?
Well, what I thought about this morning was the rain, and I left my apartment without an umbrella. So I definitely thought about the weather in terms of rain.
All right. All of those are ideas that we can brainstorm about this very broad topic called weather. Now, as we work with this speech, we're going to have to make some decision as to what is important for the audience to whom we are presenting and what is not of importance or of interest to the audience that we are presenting to. I have had the opportunity to work with executives such as yourself around the country, and many of them are greatly concerned. Oh, I spent so much time. My administrative assistant spent so much time preparing this speech, and it was a complete dud. What happened? What happened? The information researched was accurate, it was timely, it was interesting, it was all of those things, but it was delivered to the wrong audience. If you are talking to a group of people who are very knowledgeable about the topic you are presenting, do not insult them. Do not tell them things that they already know. They are listening to you in expectation of learning something that is new to them. Conversely, if you are talking to an audience that has no clue about what you are talking about, it is right and proper for you to assume that you need to make them aware. Now, let's talk in the final moments of this time that we have together about the needs of our audience. Joe, can you tell me one thing that an audience might need from you as speaker?
It's to be captured. It needs to be captured.
The audience?
In a number of ways, but especially it needs to be captured immediately so that you will continue with the point of the presentation.
Thank you very much. Highly placed executive in the back from company XYZ. Can you give us another expectation that the audience might have of you as speaker?
Thank you. I believe that the expectation is that they're going to take a lot home from the day. So I would recommend that you have a lot of backup materials, maybe some handouts, things of that nature, so that they can go and reference some of the things that you referred to throughout the day.
Very good. Excellent. And on that, let me hand to you some work that I pulled down off of the internet. This material can be found at publicspeaking.com. Just a website that has tons and tons and tons of material, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. There are commonly agreed upon 11 needs of an audience. What the audience most wants is for you to be yourself. Be who you are. Be natural. The audience expects, and I think that this is the most important thing, the audience expects you to come structured, organized, and prepared to enlighten them. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed working with you, and I am going to be looking to see you on television and read about you in newspapers and trade publications about the great work you do promoting your company. Thank you very much.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer. He says, "Hey, hello, sorry." But seriously, folks.
Speaking in public is no joke.
Farmer says, doctor says, chicken says.
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
The chicken.
Now to begin our evaluation session, Sheila Mudd-Baker will be leading a group panel discussion of Jerome Manigan's training presentation. So please welcome Sheila.
for the evaluation program.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, everyone. And especially thank you, Jerome. This presentation had as its objectives to summarize a whole day's worth of training to highly placed executives about how to give a speech, how to see the needs of an audience. And this is a very difficult subject, and thousands and millions of dollars probably have been devoted to this particular speech. So 5 to 7 minutes was pretty ambitious if you think about it. I'd like to introduce my 3 panelists, Joe Beal, and Alex Castillo, and Dick Reed. So sorry. One of the things in the needs of the audience is to make sure you get the right name, Dick Reed. We are going to be evaluating Jerome's speech to see how close he came to meeting his objectives for doing training on television. But before we start, I want to say that I was very impressed with the authoritative air of Jerome Manigan. If I were hiring a trainer to train my executives, I would want someone who looks that confident, who I would believe, just from hearing him, that he really knows what he's talking about. And Jerome has a lovely voice. It's a great, authoritative, low voice, which allows anyone who hears it to believe that he knows he is the center of authority. This is very important in training. So we have a series of questions. We only have 5 to 7 minutes ourselves to evaluate. The first question is, and I will start with Dick. Dick, did Jerome meet his objectives of a successful training to those highly successful executives?
Yes, I think he did. I agree with you that he has a very authoritative voice and manner, and that's important in a training environment. And so yes, I think he met his objectives quite well.
Yes. And how was the training program directed towards the needs of the audience? Joe. I will repeat that. So how was the training program directed towards the needs of the audience?
Excuse me. The needs of the audience, as far as public speaking, are fine. But we need to remember that the needs of the audience in regards to communication is much more important. And I think he served that very well. He had some points, as you said, the voice is great. Now, if I may be allowed to say something that I caught because of my association with the people in the South, he has speaking in little burps, little chips at a time, little bursts. Believe me, something like that. And he does it for emphasis. And it's probably very effective, but totally unnecessary. Believe me is a complete word. Believe me is not quite as accurate.
Okay. And I would like to know from Alex, do you believe that the training program was organized clearly and logically?
Yeah, I believe that Jerome has a strong background. Every time he steps up in the lectern, he looks very professional, and his voice with authority to say things. And when I see some that Jerome said in that paused manner is trying to capture the attention of the audience. And that particular time, Jerome has a great way to organize his speech, and he did it extremely well. To help the whole audience, I think the topic was excellent and well organized, and he did it great.
We know, Dick, that Jerome's voice is fabulous. The question is, did we look at all the different factors involved in giving such a TV presentation? Facial expressions, gestures, etc. Could you speak to that in what he did well, what could have been improved upon?
I I think he did, his facial expressions were quite good, and his gestures were quite satisfactory. The one thing that I noticed really had to do with the body of the speech, and when he made a comment about don't insult your audience. And I agree that you certainly don't want to do that. But I think as a general rule, it's better to phrase things in a positive manner than a don't do manner. You know, in other words, do this rather than don't do that.
Well, while you still have that microphone in your hand, did Jerome have any distracting mannerisms that might have taken away from a television presentation?
I didn't really notice any. I thought they were quite, no, I didn't notice any.
Well, that's great. If you don't notice any distracting mannerisms, it means you don't have any. We talked about voice, facial mannerisms, whether or not Jerome met his objectives, whether he was poised, confident, etc. The real question in all of this on television is how well did Jerome relate to his television audience? I will ask that of Alex.
He was well related, and one of the things that I noticed was the floor director making a lot of signs here and then trying to capture Jerome's attention to the camera. That was the only thing. But overall, I think everybody on the audience kept looking at what he was saying.
Okay. And Joe, one last question. If you could make this an even better speech for television, what would you do?
Basically, a speech has three purposes. One is to be sure the audience understand what you're saying, and he did that very well. Second principle is, will the audience believe it? And he did score very well on that too. And will the audience act upon what he's saying? And he did very well that too. So understanding, believing, and acting, to me, that's the taking action. Is the most important part of the speech, because otherwise, what's the purpose of the speech?
So what you're saying is Jerome did a fabulous job.
Absolutely.
We enjoyed it, and I'd like to thank all of the panel members, and again, thank you, Jerome and Mr. Toastmaster.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters Club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
At this point, I'd like to reintroduce Sheila Mudd Baker for the wrap-up of the general evaluation report and the supplemental reports that are part of the evaluation process. Please welcome Sheila.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you. One of the most important things on television is to make sure everything is on time. So a timer's report is even more important than it normally is in a Toastmasters Club, and it's always important to Toastmasters. They don't speak too long, they don't speak too short. So I'm going to call on our timer this evening, or this morning, in this case, Tom Hoddle, to give us the basic timing for each of our speakers and our evaluators. Tom Hoddle, please welcome him.
Well, we either had a lot to say or we said it rather quickly today. Jerome, his speech for a training on television was to be 5 to 7 minutes. Jerome went 7 minutes 51 seconds. Carol, for storytelling, was to go 7 minutes to 9 minutes. She went 6 minutes 38 seconds. For table topics, Joe Buell, 1 minute, 7 seconds. These are supposed to be 1 to 2 minutes. Dick Reed, 39 seconds, in and out. I was unable to time myself up here, unfortunately. And Gary Mall, I had to kind of guess because I was settling in. It was came in about 1 minute. For the panel evaluation, I thought this was rather appropriate. Also 5 to 7 minutes, as with the speech, and as with Jerome's speech, 7 minutes, 51 seconds. And Gary, your evaluation of Carol was to take 2 to 3 minutes. 2 minutes, 59 seconds. Way to get it in there. And I will turn it back over to Sheila.
Well, I know that personally, as a Toastmaster, as a speaker, I have a little trouble with time. In fact, there are a few people in life who think I have a little trouble with time in all aspects of my life. So I can see it that if I can control my time, I can also help control my life. So this is another lesson we learn in Toastmasters. I'd like to give a very brief evaluation. The panel, thank you very much for all the extensive work they had to do before they started. They had to read a great deal of material to make sure they understood all of the different aspects that they had to evaluate. And I would like to say that the evaluation of the storytelling was just as lively a bit of storytelling. You did a wonderful, wonderful job, Gary. I enjoyed as much his acting as I did Carol's. So that is one of the hallmarks of a really great evaluation, is that you also can mimic what that person who was giving the presentation was doing, so that you're reflecting every aspect of that speech. And I think that was an excellent presentation. And thank you too, Tom, for giving such a fine evaluation of our timing, and we are a little bit over the edge in our time. That's true. And I understand. I've tried timing myself at the same time as I was evaluating, and it doesn't work very well. All in all, the meeting seems to have gone very well, and I've enjoyed it, and I hope everybody on television has enjoyed it too. And I'd like to go back to the Toastmaster.
And at this point, we'd like to welcome back our grammarian, Verna Gibson, for a grammatical report. And hallmark of a successful class.
Again, thank you. I've enjoyed being here today. And I guess, as a former school teacher, this is sort of right up my alley, but I was listening very carefully. There I said, Joe, you did start a sentence, no, you used a sentence and put like in the middle of the sentence, which was unnecessary, and at one point you said your, and then you repeated your again. Also at one point, Joe, you used are when you should have said is. At another point you said is when you should have said are. Joe Buell, you repeated we twice. I mean, you repeated we. Okay. All right. Dick, at one point you said cause instead of because. Tom stumbled over Mr. Toastmaster. I believe he started to say Madam Toastmaster and changed it. Jerome, I thought your presentation was fabulous, and I only picked up one thing, that you ended a sentence with the word to, presenting to, instead of to whom. Carol, you used the word okay at one point when you got a little bit flustered. You also at one point said was when you should have said were, and I believe, Sheila, you are well aware that you did say the wrong name at one point, Hurt instead of Reed. You knew that. But at another point you said is, and then you changed to and. We also had quite a few alls, but I don't believe I'm going to go into those right now. So thank you very much.
Among the main benefits of Toastmasters is that the repetitive opportunities to speak on a weekly or bi-weekly basis among friends and new guests helps us overcome those stumbling points where we double start our words or to try to insert pauses in place of those ahs and ums that we try to avoid. So, thank you all, and again, thank you, Verna, for your report. And with that, I'll return control to Rick Davis, our presiding officer.
Thank you, Joe. Pretty exciting. I'd like to invite our guests up to tell us what they saw today. And Gary, would you mind coming up and giving a few words?
Thank you, Rick. One of the hallmarks of the Toastmaster program, I think, is the support and the energy that we get from each other. And, you know, getting up in front of an audience and speaking ranks, I think, above even the fear of death. And so for a lot of folks, that's an intimidating thing. So I think it's great that you've provided such a warm and inviting atmosphere so that we can come and use this as a learning laboratory and practice our speaking skills and polishing our speaking skills and so on. So I'm very happy to have been invited, and I thank you, and I look forward to coming back again. So thank you.
I'd like to give our newest member an opportunity to say a few words. Dick, would you say a few words?
Thank you. Toastmasters is always a pleasure. When I first joined Toastmasters, my first speech that I gave, the grammarian quit counting my number of ahs at over 60. He was kind. I was the guy that sat in the back and was the first one out the door when it was time to leave. And now I find that Toastmasters is a fantastic organization, and I have improved significantly, and my only regret is that I didn't join it when I first got out of high school.
Our next meeting, according to the schedule, is June 2nd, which is at the church in Kenwood. And then the meeting after that, the next meeting here at the studio, is June 21st. So we hope to see you all here, and we will adjourn until next time. Thank you all.